All right, here we are for our third session for Talented Strength Certification. And last time we met was 2 weeks ago. We covered a whole bunch of stuff, some really key concepts we talked about. We went deeper into the alignment meter, of course. Well, one thing is we did a lot of the history of where StrengthsFinder came from. We talked about Don Clifton and his background, and we talked a little bit about the article by Michelle Louis, who describes a lot of the history. We talked about the alignment meter, and I may not have gone too much in depth on that one. I don't know if I went through a lot of slides. I think when I reviewed, I kind of moved on. I'll double check with you on that. We talked about this concept called individual environment fit. And that to me is another way to describe thriving at an individual level. At an organizational level or at a community level, thriving might look a little different. But at an individual level, what I think thriving is it's a fit between the individual and how that person is made up and their environment. And of course, their environment is very complicated. It's made up of many things. So it's kind of like an overall score. Overall, how's the environment fitting with the individual? And then in what key ways can the environment and the individual be better aligned? And with that alignment comes greater thriving. That's part of what we call progression theory. So we talked a lot about that. We even asked you to do a little exercise between last time and today, where you would look at your own maybe day as you go through the course of the day, and you assess how the different segments of your day, the different activities of your day align with you or contrast with you, and why. Why do they align with you? What about the activity is a good fit for you? And what about this other activity might be a bad fit or a more difficult fit, a more challenging fit for you? I think it's kind of cool. It kind of plays with that idea of fit to serve, that in order to serve, we have to have a certain level of fitness, and fitness could be looked at in many different ways. And I look at it in terms of the fit between the individual and their environment. I think that's kind of like a universal way to think about things. All right. And StrengthsFinder, of course, has a huge part of that because, because of what StrengthsFinder looks for, what it's assessing. It's looking for 34 patterns, right? And 34 patterns of what? They're patterns of TFB, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And that, of course, being the basic building block of how we talk about humans in a social science kind of way. We describe everything in psychology, sociology, and all the areas around there, learning theory and so forth. We're talking about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That's what the patterns are. Yeah, very good. Heather reminded us that StrengthsFinder is an alignment meter of sorts. So that's where we've been. A couple more things actually. That wasn't all. We talked about the strength formula. I guess I can even share my screen with y'all. So, here we are. We talked about, the history of StrengthsFinder. We talked about the alignment meter. There's a lot. I don't think I went through a lot of these slides. Did I go through all of these? Did I build out the progression of this for you guys? I might not have. If one of you guys remembers and want to text, let me know. But then we talked about this idea of individual and environment fit. And, I had some weird ways of showing, like, this to me stands for the individual, this little circle. And the more you move in this direction, the more mature, the more developed that individual is. Maybe the more healthy their overall well-being is. And then the environment, that we can be in an environment can range from a toxic or an unhealthy environment to a very healthy, conducive environment, and everywhere in between. It's a gradient. So then we looked at like 3 avenues of where there's a misfit: the immature individual in a toxic environment, the mature, developed individual in a toxic environment, or the undeveloped individual in a healthy environment. But that what real individual environment fit looks like is the I guess I don't have a slide for it, but I started looking at it this way. But it's the healthy individual inside of the healthy environment. I don't have the image for that for some reason. I lost it. But then we started talking about the formula, the strengths formula, that the one's level of performance, of which strength is really one level. Strength is just one level of performance. Here's a whole progression of performance starting at the very bottom. In any activity, I could be oblivious to the activity, know nothing about it, and it could range all the way up to being masterful at this activity. And there's a whole range in between, and these are just my words for it. You could, there's different language for it. There's a lot of developmental models, but we want to progress and move through there. And the way we do move up this ladder towards higher levels of performance is by first applying our talents. I know it's really messy, but we want to apply our talents toward the activity, and we'll improve our performance at it. We want to grow our knowledge related to the activity, and that'll help grow our performance of it. And then we want to learn the skills or the steps of the activity, and that'll help grow our performance of it. Now, I know we're doing a lot of like review of the last session, but that was just because these were a lot of foundational concepts. So now I'm going to, start to turn it over to you all, because I know not everybody was here last time. So we posted the video. And I'd just be interested to hear any of your thoughts or reflections on some of those things so far. In fact, as we get into today's agenda, that's what I want to do. Here's our agenda for today. Talk about, recap, insights, and questions. Heather's going to bring up a rescheduling piece just in a moment. But yeah, any initial impressions from last week's session? With that, Ryan.
One thing I'll note is the activity made me really stop and think about how much we do during the day without like intentional thought. So that's a reflection that I had. It's just, we do a lot and we don't really think about what we're doing. We just kind of like go through motions. So that was helpful to slow down and really apply those concepts.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, that's really such a great insight that would come from this activity, is realizing that so much of what you're doing is letting your patterns run the show. Automaticity, I think is the word. I might not be saying it right, but we automate a lot of the things we do. Habits is a way we refer to it. And so how much of what we do are habits? And why? Why is that the case? It's almost like it allows us to pack more into the day. If I can divide myself, like, oh, while I'm mindfully doing this thing, I can mentally be doing this thing. It's our way we sort of pack it in. But what is the overall effect of that? Other people, did you have a similar observation? Or, what are your thoughts about your reflections from that activity?
I really enjoyed that you compared it to a belt system. That one really resonated with me. One of the things I noticed was, with positivity being a strength, my alignment meter was super high when I started tracking my activities. I tended to put myself in strong, energized, and wanting to keep going, even when it was something that maybe wasn't necessarily energizing for me. And I also found that I tend to put myself in situations that use my strengths. So
that's really good. Yeah. So I would say you might be experiencing pretty strong individual environment fit.
I am.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'll pull up this activity here too, to just kind of refresh you guys on what it looks like. As you go through the day, what time, what activity, what score did you give it on the alignment meter? 0 to 100. And then why, what notes around that? So yeah, good. Other insights.
I appreciated your point that contrast is the teacher. So perspective, I think, is huge. So when we look at a challenge or something that doesn't align with us, as an opportunity to learn, I think that really changes our perspective on, well, this is going to suck, or what can I learn today?
Yeah, it's so true. So true. And it's hard to do. It's hard in the moment to remember that, because when you experience contrast, what happens before it registers on our cognitive structure, our prefrontal cortex, is it registers more at our kind of primitive guidance system, our primitive brain, in the form of fight or flight, and the emotions that might come with that. So we don't respond deliberately. Anyway, I think it's really an interesting thing to look at, like how our patterns get triggered from there. All right, good. Yeah. Any other insights from last time? Yeah. Laura, is this your first time joining us?
Hi, it's my first time joining live. I've really appreciated being able to watch the video recordings after each of the sessions. Those are so helpful, and the quality of them was very good. It was easy to hear. The visuals were great. I just found myself talking back and being part of your conversations, and then remembering that I was watching a video, and then no one could hear me. So
that's what's amazing, though. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, yeah, please, yeah.
But I used the alignment meter worksheet activity. I used it on a day as an instructional coach that we met with every grade level for the first time to establish our professional learning communities. So it was a big day in our school because it was the first time that we had met with each team, each grade level, to talk about what a professional learning community is and talk about our agenda and some of the norms and how that was going to work. And I found that my meter changed a little bit with the dynamics of each team that we met with. So in response to the needs of that team, I found my meter changing. But I also found that in some of the planning pieces, then it would change. Planning and strategic is one of my highest themes. And so I found that when I was walking through with teams and doing planning, that's when I felt most comfortable and most at ease. And it was a fun tool to use. So I appreciate using that. Thanks for supporting that.
Wonderful comment, Laura. I'm looking at your top 5. I see achiever, learner, futuristic, communication, strategic. So this, I can almost imagine the groups where your alignment meter was high and the groups where your alignment meter might have dipped. To the degree you were able to achieve, you got through your agenda. Okay, that's number 1. We did it. Awesome. Learner is, happy as long as, people seem like they're engaged. Maybe it's the learning of others. You probably know all of what you were sharing, but now it bodes well for the future if everybody's understanding this. And the communication, I'll talk about that theme in a minute. You mentioned your strategic. The communication theme, I know we all communicate, but one of the key points about StrengthsFinder is to learn what they mean by communication. And in this case, what I think they mean is sort of like a fidelity between message sent and message received. That the message you send is received clearly by others, and you will do things that will help do that. You might share a story or make it more vivid or something, do an activity, depending on your other themes. But not just that, you want to make sure that others' messages are received by you. So it's kind of a two-way: message sent equals message received. And that's how I think of the communication theme. And so when that's happening, you're going to feel great. And when there's miscommunication or no communication, you get a group that doesn't talk, that could be more painful for you. You don't know if the message is getting through, right? So I think that's what's really cool about the themes and connecting it to the alignment meter. That's really great. Thank you for that. Good. Any other thoughts? This is wonderful. I love hearing from you on this. Any other reactions or reflections?
So as positivity, with that being my highest, I reflected on my numbers from my day, And I had a really hard time with my low numbers because I'm like, no, my day should have been better than that. And so as I'm sitting here and looking at it, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to average my day because surely that'll make it better because I do have some hundreds in here. Because surely I was thriving throughout my day. And I like my average from my day a lot better than I like looking at those 25s. So I will say that. But there were times like I felt the whirlwind and I felt the 25s and I felt the lower numbers. But overall, like when I reflect on the day, I could see it as a 77% day, which is not as bad as that 25.
That's so great. Yeah. So there's something in your in looking at that you feel the need for it. You can't the 25 there, it contrasts with your positivity. Is that right? Is that what we're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just,
Can
I
you
can't
explain
I
that?
can't let that 25 just sit and be because it's just so, for me, it's like so loud. That 25 is just very loud for me. And so when I look at it and I can say like, well, I can do something about that 25, I can average the whole day and say, you know what, overall though, my day was a 77. So it really wasn't that bad.
That's great. If you don't want to talk about this further, you can tell me to go away. But I think it's a really cool insight into the theme. So I do want to probe a little bit more, individualize a little bit more. So is this an activity that where you gave it a low score? So I'm sorry to make you talk about the low score, but that's what I'm
No, it's fine.
So is that an activity you do kind of regularly? Is it like a once a week or once a month thing, or how often?
So I reflect on my days often because, you know, I mean, with kids, you kind of have to, and you think about like, how could I have made that day better? Mainly for them. Like I think about them more than myself a lot. And so when I look at like what can I do? When I put it on paper, it's a lot more, I guess, effective because I'm actually seeing the things that are wrecking my day and making me have low scores. So when I say like I arrive late at work, that's a bad thing for me. So that's something that's going to throw my day off. And so I've been a lot more proactive in since doing that activity. I did that activity last week. Since doing that, I've made a conscious effort in doing things differently. And every day since then, we've gotten up earlier. We've made changes at night to make sure that we don't arrive late.
Really like it. I really like the story because it kind of showcases all of your themes, you know. Maybe the woo is not so much loud in this example, but tell me if I'm wrong, but your positivity is like, all right, things need to be better from here. How do we adapt? Because I can see how this will play out. I can see the ripples, which is what your connectedness is. And belief is the one that kind of you see, there's not right now it's maybe you're looking for the resolve, positivity, mood, connectedness, adaptability. They're sensitive to the environment, but it's when belief kicks in that you're like, enough, you know, and we're going to get this sorted out. So,
and I think a lot changed for me when you have somebody else relying on you. You know, when your daughter says, I really hate being late. You know, me, I'm notorious for being late. But when your now 7-year-old looks at you and says, this really makes me feel anxious when we're always late and I'm late all the time.
yeah.
That hurts. so we adapt and we make changes and we do what we need to do.
That's perfect. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're creating greater individual environment fit with your daughter, right? And your daughter's revealing sort of a pattern for her. What feels good to her, it's a pattern of feelings. What feels good to her versus what feels bad to her. I'm more like you. I'm more like, 5 minutes early or late, but preferably late, because I don't want to waste 5 minutes being early. I know, that's not the right mindset. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that's my pattern.
Absolutely.
Right? And so then there's contrast that you were seeing there. It was creating contrast. And what you did is you adapted. You probably felt bad at first. I don't know you. I don't know, but your thoughts and feelings were at play before your behavior kicked in. There was something, I could see your behaviors, that's more visible, but I can't see one's thoughts or feelings. But I know that in there for you, what was going on was, okay, I wanna win my daughter over, I want her to be pleased. That's, I'm able to adapt. I've been doing it my whole life, so that's great. Adaptability is my number 6. I also think it's very high for Heather too. So having that theme, I used to think it was a waste of a theme. I didn't like having it so high because I'm like, I need something with more, that's how I felt. That's a little bit about my journey of learning to embrace my themes better, because now I love having adaptability. That's a journey that I want everybody to have, is learning how to use your qualities.
It's one of my favorite qualities that I have.
Right? And there's a lot, there's so many reasons why, and you have connectedness, which I don't have very high, but that happens to be like one of my very favorite things. I love people with connectedness because they're so understanding, anyway, but we're getting into a little bit about the theme language, which I love doing, but it's also about that your themes are your alignment meter, your top 5. And now you can see that your students are going through the alignment meter journey throughout their days as well. And if they could learn from it, I think that's the point of education. I think the environment could be one of the great educators, You think teachers are underpaid? The environment is way more underpaid. No, just kidding. We shouldn't talk about teacher pay. That's not a good subject. But it's the environment is our educator. It should tell the student, okay, this is what at least Don Clifton's view. So I wouldn't put myself as an educator. I am an educator. I truly am. But I didn't study education like the way many of you have. So you are truly education professionals. And so is Don Clifton. And the view is that one of the great things we could do is find a better fit between the individual and the environment and set that individual up to thrive. But there's a t-shirt I saw, and it's such like a gym t-shirt. It says, pain is weakness leaving the body. That's a philosophy. And I think that philosophy sort of is also is the one that is the opposite of a strength philosophy. And it creeps up in our education and in the household, where it's like, any weakness, we got to focus on that. That's where all the attention should go. Hey, everybody, we got a weakness over here. We need to work on it. Instead of the other one that's like, hey, we got something really good, a real strength over here. We could build on it. All right. So that's a lot. But that's what we're after. And I want to bring us back to our agenda. We haven't even really gotten to it yet. But I think the last session's content was so rich that it's important that we locked a lot of it in. So a lot of today's session will be about that. All right. So coming back here, Laura, did you want to introduce anything about yourself, like an activity you do to near perfect, or something you do really good on a consistent basis? And why is this topic of StrengthsFinder, strengths, talented strength important to you? And any outcome you'd like to take from this? Oh, you're on mute.
Let me go back to my notes really quickly because I did answer those questions. I just
okay.
need to find them. So I know I haven't spoken live with many of you before. So I am at Riddle Elementary, one of our 2 elementaries in the building, social emotional learning instructional coach. And one of the strengths that I wrote down in those introductory questions that I do consistently is I feel that I am really strong in coordinating our family commitments and ensuring follow through with our family commitments and having that positive interaction with our families, because that's so hard to balance that family and professional commitments. And So that's one of the strengths that I do is help keep our family aligned with our family goals and our family values. The second question, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
The second question on that was why are talents and strengths important to me? And I thought about that a lot, and I'm just fascinated by the results of the Strengths Finder. And I'm really excited to learn more about how my themes can enhance my relationship and my relationship with colleagues, my relationship with my family, my friends, and how that can help enhance my performance at work and just my role as a mom and a wife and a friend and a daughter and all of those things in my life.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. Really great. And that's what we're about too, is how our talents are a resource we can apply in all these different areas of our life. And so that's what I want to introduce a model to you now that I haven't talked about much, but I'm one of the reasons I was excited for today is that I get to talk about it. So it's this, let's see, what am I sharing with you? There we go. It's this one here. And I want to talk through, I want to tell a little narrative while I go through this, it's about sort of the movement of personal potential, the human potential kind of movement. And I remember learning early on about the importance of financial planning and managing your money. So actually I should use green. Here it was like, wow, if you really think about this as a resource, if you think about your wealth or your income as a resource, you could grow it. You could grow your wealth. You can actually, one of the big books in the 50s, I think, is one called Think and Grow. Do you know the last word? Rich. Think and Grow Rich. I think it was by Napoleon Hill. Anyway, so it was a focus on using this resource and growing it, and the reason you want to do it is it'll lead to, thriving. They didn't maybe use those words as much, but it leads to the things you want. It leads to outcomes you want. And so learning how to manage the resource became an activity, something that there's industries and training sessions and there's a whole financial planning industry that's grown out of this. It's a billions and billions of dollars industry. The whole financial sector, Wall Street, all of it, world global finance stems from this idea. Now, when I started in college and getting into the professional world, there was a big movement afoot to do the same thing with time. That time is a resource. Time is something that if you learn to manage it, it'll help you thrive more and it'll help you get the outcomes you want more. I worked for a company called Franklin Day Planner that was bought by Covey, Franklin Covey. You guys do some of the Covey training in your leadership program there. Right? So it was all about, hey, here's a quote from Ben Franklin. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff of which life is made. You got to picture me wearing a wig and all that, but, and maybe having more of an accent, but that was the thinking, that we can really get more out of our life by managing our time, what we do with our time. I remember in the webinar, they were talking about, in the Franklin Covey webinar, they were talking about what could you do with a pound of steel. You could make one horseshoe. You could make 100 pins, or you could make 500 watch springs. Something like that. Get a pound of steel. Do you want to make horseshoes with your life? Thinking, if that pound of steel is your time, you know, what do you want to do with that? And how do you leverage it? Does that make sense? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like this idea of the wealth management and then the time management. Do you see where I might be going next? What, you know, or why I'm bringing that up? Any thoughts?
My guess is if we can harness our money and our treasures, we can use them to improve our life. Same with our time. So if we can harness and manage and use our talents in ways that help us, then we too can thrive. Like
Right.
get 500 springs.
Great, exactly. So, you know, basically what we want to do now is look for ways that we can manage our talents better. That's the whole lesson here is if and think of what a talent is. So when we talk about managing that resource, what is that resource we're talking about when we say manage talent? Does anybody want to open that up? I mean, when the definition of a talent is patterns of what? TFB, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So we're talking about managing those patterns, which I think is something, I think that's amazing, first of all. I wish I was educated in a system that had a philosophy for how to manage that. Does that make sense? Am I overplaying it or whatever? Like, I just think that yes, this is important. I'm not downplaying managing money, right? I mean, I'm not good at it myself. I do think it's important to manage time, but if those two things are important, then my gosh, how important is this? So yeah, how would you react to that?
I think about the impact of facilitating that mindfulness and intentionality in our young learners at an early age so that they're monitoring their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and applying that analysis early on, that becomes the pattern. How powerful for them, you know, to do that, and that just becomes their way of being, as opposed to, you know, at 43 thinking, oh, I need to kind of rewire my way of being to do that. So that's, I think, really, really inspiring and exciting.
I do too. And combining that with your observation from earlier about how much of our days are spent on, you know, just blindly going through, you know, activities throughout the day. That if we did harness our patterns better, that, you know, we could have a much greater impact. We could have, we could live more deliberately. We could avoid what Thoreau described as, you know, the mass of people leading lives of quiet desperation. I don't know if you remember that quote, the actual proper quote from Henry David Thoreau is, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. It's one of his more famous quotes. And what he was saying is that people are going through their lives running patterns. And then when they wake up and go, wait a minute, I'm not my collection of patterns. The sooner we could do that, the better. And I believe that's what our education system can instill. But my concern, this is a little editorial on my part, is that we're training them to be somebodies. We're actually, that education has sort of become a factory for, you know, maybe whatever the modern day image of a somebody is, which is an employee, you know, a factor of production. And that really the value, I think that all draws us to education is that, no, we're more than that. We are a unique and amazing and unprecedented potentiality. That's what each individual represents. You know, so why are we running them through the factory if each one is a unique potentiality? And I think that's what this is meant to sort of bring to it. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this idea, this model, this thought of, all it was connecting movements that we've had before, you know, the movements around wealth management that we don't question. We know it's important. If you want, you know, for your families, you know, it's important to manage that in a capitalistic society. This is survival and thriving in capitalistic society is measured in this way. And but we also know there's more to life. And it's like, are we doing what we want with our time? Not just spending all our time to make money, but are we enjoying what we're doing with our time? Because you know what? If I lose all my money, there's a chance I can get it back. But if I lose all my time, there's not a chance to get it back. And there's some people that they've never even learned how to use their talents. They've never been, had it explored what their time. Everybody can get a watch, so everybody knows their time. Everybody can have a, wallet or purse or billfold or whatever and have treasure. But there's a lot of people that have gone their entire lives without really mining this resource of their talents. And what we could do to address the challenges of the world if we do so. So this isn't like, there's a lot at stake in this conversation of talent. All right. Any thoughts or reactions before I move on? Because I don't really have much more to say on that. Except maybe to say this, that we could use one resource to grow the others. Like, how do I use my talent to make the most out of my time? I can't get more time, but can I infuse my time with more of what I'm passionate about? And that makes my time better. How do I want to earn income? Do I want to earn income by just selling my time? Or do I want to, would it be more fun to earn an income from something that allows me to engage my talents? So that's the other thing, is the interplay among these resources. So what do you think of any of that, my friends? Do your patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behavior, your talents, do they waste time? If are you using them to waste time? I don't know. That other question, Christy, you look like you had a thought bubble up here above your head.
Well, when you said that, Adam, I just connected to like my top talent as an achiever. I think sometimes that talent does result in wasting time. I don't know, wasting, but it's like just like you're getting things done without like that intentionality of like, is this the right thing to be getting done?
See, I love that point. It's so important. See, that achiever, it has a drive. It wants to get things done. It wants to check things off. It's not afraid to exert energy. It even feels good to do it. But a lot of times there's that idea of just spinning your wheels that people, so how do we make sure that the achiever isn't just a doer, but it actually is achieving? What counts as achievement? See, the world is going to put a lot of things on your to-do list. It won't stop doing it. It will forever do it. There is a downstream always trickling to you right in front of you. And it's based on your demands that are around you. Your work is in your upstream, and it's going to send downstream to you tasks associated with work. Some of those tasks will align with you and others won't. Even if, no matter what your positivity theme wants to do with those, Andrea, you know what I mean? Like, there's just going to be things that, your relationships you're in, they're in your upstream, and they're going to send downstream to you things that might fit with you or contrast with you. And what I want to be able to do, I want to teach our young people how to navigate that space so that their upstream is made up of things that align with them as much as possible. That's another way to think of individual environment fit, is manage your upstream. Nobody told us we could do that. But this idea of thinking of your talents as a resource begins to get you thinking about it. Am I spending my talents on the things I want to be spending them on? It's a really great question, really good reflection. All right. So I'm going to move on from there, unless you have anything else. We can always come back to any of this, but I think it's great. I love this. So that, let me get to the agenda. I'm a little discombobulated. I want to get my combobs together. All right. So I didn't talk about the alignment meter for zones yet. I don't know how much I went into it. I just went right to time, treasure, talent, and I sort of skipped this question because we were having some really good dialogue and getting into our schedule a little bit. But what I'd like to do is move right into theme anatomy. We can come back to any of these questions, but I'd like to talk about that model. So how much have I talked about the theme anatomy? I'll put it up here and you can see what I'm talking about. Maybe not at all. Okay, but you might have had your reports for your theme anatomy. So does this look familiar? All right, let me tell you what you're looking at then. I believe that if you were to cut the theme in half or like, make like a, I forget what you call it when you make a side view of
Cross section.
Thank you,
You're
Heather.
welcome.
This is a cross section. And at the center of that cross section of a theme is a purpose. This is the most inside aspect of a theme. There's a reason that theme exists. Each one, there's a different reason each theme exists, I believe. And that theme, because it has a purpose, it also has needs. In order to meet its purpose, it has needs. So each of your themes has a need. Your positivity theme has a need to see the upside. If I can't see the upside, my purpose is thwarted. My achiever theme has the need to accomplish. And unless that need gets met, my purpose is thwarted, right? So every theme has a purpose. That purpose has needs. And in meeting those needs, we develop patterns. Patterns for how we think. Patterns for how we think. My ink ran out. All right. Patterns for how we feel and patterns for how we behave. This is where Gallup begins defining themes. They define the themes as patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that can be productively applied. I know, blah, 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 productively applied. Why do I even bother trying to write this out? All right, productively applied. All right. That's what a pattern is. But I'm saying, well, why do we have the patterns? I'm going a little beneath it. This is what the intellection theme likes to do. I like to go a little deeper. Why do we have those patterns? Because we're trying to meet needs. That's why. Does that make sense? The reason you do what you do, it may not always make sense, but it's because you feel like it'll help you meet your needs. And that need comes from this drive, you're not even aware of it. A very maybe non-conscious, below your level of awareness drive to meet a need. And that's why you behave the way you behave throughout your days. And over time, those patterns for thinking, feeling, behaving are really your personality. That's what a personality is. The definition of a personality is one's stable patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors over time. You are largely, not completely, but a lot of it are your patterns. How do I know you? How do your kids know you? How do your pets know you? By your patterns. And how do you know them? Similarly, by their patterns. So I want to stop. I want to see how that's landing for you as I say that. Your coworkers are a collection of patterns. Your students, you're going to get familiar with their patterns that they picked up from their household, and they're going to infect each other with their patterns. Or you're going to infect them with education. Anyway, yeah, reactions to this so far, patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and the connection to your themes and all of that. And that they come from a purpose, and it's about meeting our needs to fulfill that purpose.
I feel that Andrea and I can relate to this because we talk often when we collaborate about our different themes and our different strengths and how each one of us brings something to the table that helps the other person increase their themes in other ways. And we were just fortunate enough to both be placed in a role together, and we feel like we're kind of she's the yin to my yang, and we get our goals accomplished by using both of our themes that we're strongest in, that I don't think we could be as productive doing it alone.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking here. So are there any themes in particular, like Andrea? I don't know why it's not letting me write on here, but Andrea's got the positivity and the woo, adaptability, connectedness, and belief. And Laura has achiever, learner, futuristic, communication, strategic. Am I looking at the right combo there? Yeah. So
We're just very opposite. When we get together, we learn a lot about each other because we're complete opposites in the world of SEL. It's
and
really fun.
do you remember when you first started working together? How long ago was that?
A year.
Okay, so not that long ago. Did it just fit right away, or did it conflict right away?
It didn't ever conflict. We just had to learn, and we meshed. Like there were like these, it was like this, like here's Laura and here's me. And it just went like this because we had these just voids that needed to be filled, and we filled them for each other.
There's a phrase I love from the ancient Greeks. It's translated, they didn't speak English, but it's translated to the complementarity of excellences. And I think about that a lot when I think about this. And that's a strategy for managing weakness. Because a lot of times, and parents do this because they love their kids. It's like, oh, there's a weakness, we have to focus on it. What do? We need to, and then the one way to focus on a weakness is, well, you need to work on it and work on it and work on it. There's other ways to manage a weakness. And one of those is through complementarities of excellence, right? Find people who are strong where you're weak and trade with them, or trade with others where, by offering where your strengths are. But first you have to know what your strengths are, but you can't know what they are if everybody's telling you what your weaknesses are. And then you feel bad and have this self-image based on weakness, as opposed to a self-image based on strength. So anyway, I love it. So being around other people that compliment you, but how did that read to you at first? Because when you see somebody with a set of patterns that are opposite of yours, contrast kicks in, doesn't it? So yeah, how did you guys overcome that?
Well, I think one example, Andrea, I'll share is it's kind of funny when we plan events together. I like to plan early, and I like to be very detail oriented, and Andrea sees the bigger picture, and Andrea brings the positivity and the fun to those things. So in planning, when we first started working together, we had to find a way to balance those, because I wanted to get things done really early and really quickly and really structured. And Andrea would say, it's okay, we'll get it done. We'll get it done. We'll get it done.
We'll figure it out. We'll adapt to it. I don't know, it always works out. I'm circling the themes as they say it. I really believe it will happen, but you know what? At the last minute, when I really need to kick it into gear, I can, because my belief won't let me fail you.
And I do believe that the outcome that we created together, I do believe was better than we could have done individually. But it was like me being really cognizant that she doesn't work in the same pattern in which I work, and the way I work is not right or wrong. It's just different than the way she works. So it took a little bit of adapting. It took a little bit of flexibility, and we're both better for it.
Love that so much. Let's take some of these things, like let's take the achiever theme real quick, and let's run it through the you know what, I actually didn't finish the theme anatomy, so let me do that, and then we'll actually talk about some specific ones. So back to the theme anatomy now. So those patterns, You know, and you're seeing, oh, we got to wait for those patterns to fit together. That's great. Now, so that means your patterns were a match. You found a way in your relationship to get the best out of those patterns, to find the right match between each other, to find the right match between which themes should be used in which situation. And another, you avoided the mismatch, which happens a lot too. And when I think of mismatch, it's more like a mismatch between your theme and the situation you're in. So in running your patterns to meet your needs, to fulfill the theme's purpose, those patterns are either going to be a match for what's going on around you, or they're going to be a mismatch. And we've run into that before. Like, what's a mismatch for achiever? A mismatch for the achiever theme is you're in a situation where you can't get anything done. That's frustrating for an achiever. A mismatch for positivity is when things are, negative. We're not getting the right results. So what ends up happening is people just deal with match or mismatch, and they don't even know about any of the other stuff around it. That most people go through life with just going, oh, did that work or did that not work? Oh, did I get a raise or did I get fired? Did I get a good grade or did I get detention? Most people don't go, oh, well, my patterns led to those outcomes. I didn't match my patterns to the situation. Why do I keep getting kicked out in the hallway? Am I a bad kid? I'm sitting here and in the hallway as people walk by, it's embarrassing. Well, my patterns of behavior came from my patterns of thinking. I am an ideator, I'm a creative. And then I taught, and it was a mismatch in a class. We can't have students all doing it, but I didn't know any better. I was just getting the repercussions of the match or the mismatch. And that's one of the things that I hope we can bring to the students. I mean, this is the whole fit to serve thing that I mean, you guys tell me what fit to serve is more, but for me, it's about having the students' fitness being, who am I? And where do I excel? And where do I need to manage and find partners? And how can I produce the best matches? And how do I internally manage myself to avoid the mismatches? All right, any reactions to that? Because does that fit with the whole game, do you think, of what we're trying to do? Does that fit with the overall vision for it?
I definitely think that mindset would help all students and people, because when our students are out in the hallway, it's not that they're necessarily being bad most of the time, but maybe that environment isn't their, individual environment fit. And there's nothing wrong with that, but knowing when they're going to be in a mismatch so that they can help manage those behaviors, thoughts, and feelings is going to prevent them from being in situations like that.
That's great. That's great. And it's why, it's so much of what the art of teaching is about. Educating is, like talking about learning styles and how we can, reach students from different, who approach the world outside from different ways, and I know I don't know what the latest learning theory is. I remember multiple intelligence theory. There's also, stuff around like, are you an auditory learner or a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner, or I don't know what the other styles are. So, but that's what that's getting at, is what are the avenues what are the doorways into the students, so we can help, find a better fit in the education environment, how they can get the most out of their education by fitting their patterns to the classroom. So one of the reports that we gave you all is the theme anatomy. And we haven't talked about it yet, but that's going to be the main thing I'm going to want you to do as a result in between our sessions. And I don't really have a worksheet on this that I know of or can think of. I really just want you to spend time looking at your report and understanding your patterns. So let's take, we could talk about, let me ask you, is there a theme we haven't talked about yet you'd like to talk about? This would be a good time, bless you. Yeah, any themes that you want to talk about?
How about strategic?
Love it. I love it because that's my number one theme. So I'm down for strategic. All right. So the strategic theme, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. All right. So the purpose of the strategic theme is, and by the way, this just comes from my own wording. This is not Gallup official for any of this. So Feel free to play with the wording, but I think it's about quickly determining the options for the best path forward to get the desired results. And one way we do it, I didn't need to add this in here, but we play through scenarios and select the most sensible one, making the best use of resources. That's kind of the purpose of it. And you can kind of see in life how, like, I kind of go back to when we lived in clans and stuff and be like, why would a clan need somebody who's good at determining the options for the best path forward? You know, how would that help their survival and thriving as a clan to be able to do this? You know, I go all the way back. I get primitive with these things to really try to understand the value of them. Right? And I can see, oh, yes, our community's faced with options. Do we go this way or that way? Well, if we go this way, we have some elderly people or some sick people or whatever, and that's going to be easier for, you know, whatever it is. The purpose then leads to a need. I need to know what the intended outcome is. I can't do all this stuff if I don't know what we're trying to achieve. And I also can't do all this stuff. I can't do my purpose if I don't know what options I have to choose from. If there's no options, there's no need to strategize. And you know what else I need? I need others to understand the reasoning before they judge it. Because when I'm strategizing, there's a lot of factors that are hard to explain, and it's not going to make sense to people that don't have strategic. Or even if they do, it may not make sense to them unless I describe the factors and how I see it. So it's a very, this thing is you know, has needs. And so as a result of those needs, some things are going to feel good to me and some things are going to feel bad to me. Think of the contrast and alignment meter. An example is, I'm going to feel confident when I can see the right path. I'm going to love that. It's going to feel like a little victory, like, aha, I know how to do this. I'm going to feel really bad. I'm actually going to feel paralyzed if I don't have any information to help me know which path is clear. Everything is equal then in my eyes, and I don't know how to be strategic, so I don't know what moves to make. That feels bad for me. Some things I think. Now, the way I normally phrase these in this report is I'll phrase them in the form of questions. That's not necessarily how we think, but you know, the questions get at the kind of thoughts we have. Like for the strategic, it's like, what is the desired result? And what are the best options? What are the opportunities and what are the obstacles or constraints? And based on all that, what's the best route? A lot of my thoughts are about that all throughout the day. And then there's behaviors that come from those thoughts and feelings. Now, this may not be like a behavior you can see, but I am mentally playing through options. And I am creating plans all the time. And then, you know, I will try to advocate the best path. If I'm given the opportunity, I'm going to try to explain why. Now, because of those patterns, there's going to be some situations that are a good match and some situations that are a bad match, a mismatch. Situations that are a good match, here's what I think, and you can add to it. But situations where there's no set pathway, where we're able to come up with better pathways. I love situations like that. I don't do well when everything's defined and nobody's open to better ideas, better ways to do things. When there's multiple routes to get to a goal, I'm great there because then I can use my strategic to play with it. Each choice leads to further options. That's really good for strategic because that's how we think. And yet, one path is advantageous over the others. We just need to find it. Situations like that are a really good match. And that enables me. In situations like that, I'm able to quickly orient to the situation, identify optimal pathways to get results. I'm quick to see patterns. I'm quick to see obstacles. And I'm able to see opportunities. Sometimes the language gets a little redundant in here, but that's for a reason, you know, to really kind of lock in on the theme. Situations that are a mismatch for strategic would be ones that don't allow choices, where the best route's already obvious to everyone. You don't need the strategic there anymore. Or there's no way to determine the best path. It's all even, Steven, random. And that will put me in a rut. That won't enable me. That'll put me in a rut. And that's when people are going to perceive me as like, I'm too abstract, I'm too out there, I'm ungrounded from reality because they can't see what I'm talking about. And or they may see me as calculating or manipulative because I am, not in a mean way or a bad way. It's just I'm always playing through the if-then statements. I can't not do it. So thank you for hearing that out. What was that like to go through that theme anatomy like that? Any reactions from you all? Because I'm going to want you to do that for your themes over the next week. Does anybody here have strategic that you might know what I'm talking about? Christy
do.
has, yeah. Christy, what did you think as I was going through that one?
I was like, yes, I find that I thrive in places where I can envision a better way or come up with ideas. And oftentimes whenever you were describing a thing about you're quick to see a clear path, I feel like I think I feel that way. And then in the rut, I've thought of that thing about turning up, turning down often, because sometimes in situations, I'll see a clear path really quickly. And I think it's the best. And here are the reasons why in my mind, but I have to kind of turn that down to make sure that other great ideas aren't missed because I'm so quick to get to an idea.
That's a great point. That has happened a lot. Yeah. And Laura, you have this as strategic as well. Did you notice anything from there?
I was just giggling when Christy was describing that because I feel those same feelings. And sometimes I think I mistakenly come across as maybe rushing or going too quickly. And it's the perfect example, like Christy said, to remind myself to slow down and listen to all ideas, because my brain is just like, go, get there. And you're right. We miss things if we don't listen carefully to all ideas. And it's the perfect reminder. And if we're not aware that those are our themes and those aren't aware that those are our potential pitfalls, then we can't be as productive.
Yep.
I'd like to add to what Laura just said, because I think she and I both have strategic paired with achiever. And so it's like, guys, this is the best plan. We just need to do this and let's just get going on it. So that pairing can be super awesome, but it can also be very like, oh my gosh, you're being manipulative because you're just trying to get everybody to do it your way, when that's not really the motivation. It's more just like, well, it's not because it's my way, just because it's like obviously the best plan. And that's not that's what it comes across. So yes, I agree to all of those things, and just that like self-regulation of, we don't have to achieve this right now. And although this might be a good strategy, it's not the only strategy.
So a couple of things on that. One is with the strategic theme specifically, and with the futuristic theme, and with the arranger theme. It probably applies to others too, but those three specifically, I think it's really helpful to learn how to share with other people your trail of mental breadcrumbs. How did you get from where you are to the conclusions you drew, and then explain it to others. It's a drag to do it because it's slow and it takes time. And one of the great things about strategic is it's super fast. But in that super fast calculation, you will lose people. And so by learning, developing the ability to explain your trail of breadcrumbs, that helps. So I want to bring it back though, that talking about strategic was really just a way to talk through the theme anatomy as an example, because I think it's another way to understand our themes. We have a theme anatomy for every single one of the themes. It was a lot of work to do it, but to think through for each one, what is the purpose? Because that doesn't exist anywhere. Gallup doesn't have a purpose for each theme. And then what are the needs for each theme? That doesn't really exist. Now the patterns, that is what your signature themes report will describe. The paragraph that describes each theme, that's all describing the patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It doesn't label, this is a thought pattern, this is a feeling pattern, this is a behavior pattern. But if you read those descriptions, you'll see in a whole new way, read it through the lens of these patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and your themes will become alive and new for you, And then ultimately it's about the match or the mismatch, because That's what lives out here. What lives outside here are outcomes. Now, are the outcomes going to be matchy outcomes, or are they going to be mismatchy outcomes? We don't want the mismatchy outcomes. We want the matchy ones. We want the matching outcomes, but we don't even know how to get them. We don't even know why we got match or mismatch until we do something like StrengthsFinder, not even just taking StrengthsFinder, because that's not enough. It's actually taking something like what we're doing that goes deeper into what the themes are. Because most people that do StrengthsFinder, they only are talking about this circle. They don't even talk about this outer ring of match or mismatch. They don't talk about the needs that much or the purpose, hardly at all. So this is what we need to get the outcomes we want. And the outcomes, another way for me to describe outcomes, because the outcomes we want are thriving. So there's a universal outcome we all want. The universal outcome we all want is thriving. Thriving is growth, success, and flourishing. That's what happens if you go to the dictionary and look up thriving, growth, success, or flourishing. If you go to the etymology of it, thriving is about to seize or to grasp for oneself. Thrifa. Heather's waiting for me to say that. She doesn't want to do that, but yeah, so that's thrifa. Oh, I do that too. You got to seize, you got to grasp, you got to thrifa for oneself. And learning to harness one's patterns is one of the most powerful ways to do that. All right, I know we're kind of bringing it in for a landing. There's one more model I want to discuss with you. We've discussed it already a little bit, but before I do, any other thoughts, any thoughts, feelings, or behaviors about theme anatomy?
With the analysis that we did for figuring out when we were our alignment meter, I find it helpful personally. I know when I'm in a mismatch. I know when the task that I'm given for the day is not a match. And there are tasks that fit that way. But if I sandwich it between times that I'm matched, I'm more productive during that time. So if I looked at my alignment meter, I have like 100 and then a 35 and then like a 95.
That is cool. That is cool. I'm looking at your themes to see why you think that way. And maybe it's your developer.
Well, and woo. So I have woo. So anytime I'm not working with others, I tend to be a little bit of a mismatch. So if I have independent work time, which I do have throughout my day, I make sure that I sandwich it between times where I have times to interact with others and communicate with others and be that personality.
That is such great self-knowledge and self-management. It's wonderful. It's good. And it's great. And going into the themes can help us, like managing positivity. I want to come back to you, Andrea, on this one. So the knee-jerk reaction would be, oh, I only got a 25. I don't want to deal with it. But another way for positivity to deal with it would be to say, all right, I know that could get better and we want to make it better. And then to think about what we could do to manage that activity. That's it. But what the lesson is for all of us is that we will have our knee-jerk aversions to things, avoidances of things, and our knee-jerk attraction to things. And we should learn about both of those. And that information is mighty to the individual. It helps us navigate life. And that's what I think education is about. All right. So good. Any other thoughts? Love all this about theme anatomy. And we're going to talk about it next time too, because to the degree you all have discoveries to bring from it, because that's really going to be the main focus between now and then. And yeah, any other thoughts you have or comments you have about the theme anatomy? Do you like it? Is it confusing? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you want a sticker of a theme anatomy? A tattoo? All right, nothing? All right. So I want to talk about this model a little bit more from last time. Did I talk about this at all last time? The 4 domains of a theme. The themes, Gallup organizes the themes. This is the older one. I don't have the colors totally right, but you can see like the blue, that's the relationship building themes. The yellow are the influencing themes. The purpley ones over here are executing themes. And the red ones, which are now green, Gallup changed them to green, are the thinking themes. So I'm going to put this little circumflex over here in the corner. Nobody puts baby in the corner, but you can put a circumflex in the corner. What we can do though is now look at this and kind of talk about these 4 categories of themes. And do you guys remember what I said about the 4 categories? Do you guys think I like it or dislike it? Or yeah, I have some concerns about it.
You do not like it, but I like the words on the outside, the outward and inward. I hadn't seen that before.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. Great. Thank you. Perfect. So the reason I don't like it is because any one of the themes could be used to build relationships. Any of the 34 themes could be used to better build relationships. Any of these 34 themes could be used to influence, and any of them could be used to get things done, and any of them can be used to analyze or make decisions. You know, in fact, they're all different ways of analyzing and making decisions, and they're all different ways of getting things done. And all 34 themes are different ways of influencing, and all 34 themes are different ways of relating. All right. So, but instead, what I think is that these 4 domains describe every task. Every task you have, maybe you have a task that's just purely executing. Or maybe you have a task that's executing and influencing. You know what I mean? It might be a combo task. Maybe you're just going to hang out with a loved one and it's just about relationship. It's just hanging out. We're not doing anything. Or maybe we're going to hang out and get stuff done. You know? So you can see, or maybe you have tasks that like involve all 4 of them. Sure, I'm sure there's some tasks that do it. But what I think of these 4 things are the domains, not of the themes, but the domains of demands that life places on us. And what is a demand? A demand is, well, I don't know what else. I don't know how to describe it. I think you all know what I mean by a demand, something that the world needs from us, something we're supposed to do, an obligation, a commitment. And how do you meet a demand? So I think of like weights. Like if I'm doing a bench press, the demand is, let's say it's it's 100 pounds of on the barbell. Well, I need to meet it with at least 100 pounds of resistance. And the word for that is what? When we're talking about weightlifting. So I think of strength, but really strength is just one level of performance. If you remember our performance ladder. So I mentally do that. I change the word strength to performance, or actually the level of performance is what I think of as strength. So my level of performance will determine how well I meet the demands placed on me. Does that make sense? My level, like think of an assignment you give to a student. You're placing a demand on that student, and their performance will determine the degree to which they meet that demand, right? Now, have you ever seen a student where you've given them, they have an assignment or you didn't give it to them, but they have something, a demand placed on them that is way beyond their ability to meet it? It could be a life demand, maybe a household, something or other. For me, that's what I define as suffering. I define suffering as when the demand is so great that our ability to meet it is just not there. It could be a financial demand, and I'll suffer financially. It could be an emotional demand, and if I'm not able to meet that emotional demand, I will suffer emotionally. It could be a physical demand placed on me, and if I was drawing, you guys couldn't see my thing. I was drawing over here. If the demand is too great, then I suffer. And I could have a financial demand, an emotional demand, a physical demand, and if I can't meet the demands, I suffer. And that's where contrast kicks in. That's where the teacher kicks in, and the teacher says, okay, you are going to continue to suffer unless you gain something you don't have, or you lose something you need to get rid of. Or it could be both. You need to get something and lose something else. You need to get a new skill. You need to lose an old mindset. You need to gain new friends. You need to lose this bad habit or this addiction or whatever. And if you do that, you advance to struggle. Struggle is no picnic, but it is way better than suffering. And struggle is what I call nature's catalyst for growth. How did you get good at anything? You had to struggle. Suffering probably didn't do you much good, but struggle, if you meet it, could be a catalyst for growth. And if you make enough growth, you move over to this next zone that I call traction. You're not struggling, you're not suffering, you're actually gaining ground, you're actually feeling some momentum, some traction, some gain, some movement toward thriving, which is where we ultimately want to go. So I didn't explain the zones of the alignment meter before, but I thought it was helpful to do that, especially as we get into these 4 domains, because these are the 4 domains of demands life places on us, and we need to meet those demands by performing what? What do we need to perform? The right activities. And how well do we need to perform them? We need to perform them at the right level. And the right level doesn't always have to be strength. Remember, there's a lot of levels of performance. Strength is just one level of performance. Maybe if you just perform it at the basic level, that demand will get met. Aren't there demands placed on you that if you just do the basics, that's fine? Demand goes away. You're done. You met it. The basics of writing a check to pay your electric bill. You don't need to have a strength at that. You just do the basics. Some activities you need to be a little better. You need to have some competence. Some you might need to be advanced. You have no business doing this profession if you're not advanced in these activities. And some, oh my God, you're so good at this. You do it effortlessly and easily, and you know, we'll pay you to do that. We'll pay you a lot of money to do that. We're moving up the ladder, and we're able to meet demands. Did I tell you a story about the boy and the baby bull? Did I do that one with you? One day, this dad and his son, they go to the market, and this boy, he sees the baby bull, and he's like, Dad, I want the baby bull, buy me the baby bull, I want the baby bull. And the dad's like, no, and the kid keeps begging him. And the dad finally says, all right, I'll get you that baby bull under the condition that you lift it over your head every day for the rest of your life, or its life, whichever comes first. And the boy agrees, and he's true to his word.
Oh.
And every day he lifts that bull over his head, and something amazing happens. Over time, people start to gather around, and they come to pay to see this boy, young man now, do this daily exercise of lifting a full-grown bull over his head. And then people gather around and say, wow, you know, they're all impressed. But the young man, how did he react? How does he feel about it, lifting the bull over his head? Is he impressed? No, it's something he does every day. It's easy for him. And that's kind of what our theme, that's what his strengths are. That's what our themes are, our patterns, are things we've done so, we do them so often that they've become effortless for us. And we're not impressed with ourselves because of it a lot of the time. We're not impressed with ourselves because it's something we do every day. We take it for granted. And what Don Clifton was trying to do was help people see their strengths. He said this about, I used to have the quote on this flip chart. I was working on something the other day, but what it said on there was the quote, I think it was on there last time, your strengths hide in plain sight. And this is what he meant. That the things you do so well every day, you've built your life around them already. You don't even know it. Your greatest strengths are invisible to you. Things you do so well, they may not have a name, but they're activities you do so well. So that's kind of the lesson there, and just bringing it back to this model about the 4 domains. So that's the lesson I want us to take from it, is that we can harness our themes. We can identify the right activity. Actually, I have a slide I prepared for it. Basically, this is what we're talking about. For your students, for yourself, Harness your dominant patterns. These patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Use them to perform the activities that will help you meet the demands placed on you, that will help you thrive. Then perform those activities at the right level. Move up that ladder of performance. And in doing so, the performance of that activity at the right level will produce the desired outcomes. And that's what we mean by thriving. And so StrengthsFinder is just, it's a language of patterns. It's 34 patterns. And I don't know that you'll be using those with your students right now, but you can use them for yourself. That's what we've done. We've identified your patterns. But using them with your students and helping them harness them and learning to do it and apply it towards the activities that will lead to their thriving. All right, we have about 4 or 5 minutes for any plus delta. That gets us through the content that I wanted to cover for the most part. In fact, I think I covered everything. I'm going back to the agenda. Oh, we want to talk about this. I don't know if we have enough people here to address it. Heather, do you want to see if we?
I'll just send out an email.
Okay. We talked about the 4 zones of the alignment meter. We maybe didn't get to these 2 specifically. So maybe if you guys want to in the last few minutes, if you have any response to those, but we did this, we did this, we did this. Next steps are going to be for you to really, I want you to just, I don't have a worksheet or anything, but I really want you to delve into your top 5 themes and the theme anatomy of them and see how they relate to your alignment meter. Actually, that would be what to do with it. All right. So in the last few minutes, any thoughts or reactions to what's happening to your overall understanding of this topic, and how's this fitting into your intentions for Fit to Serve? Love to hear from as many of you as possible. Who's left? Yeah. Any reactions to that? What's happening to your understanding, and any thoughts for how this fits into the Fit to Serve programming?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our students, because I think about especially our 4th graders who take the StrengthsFinder. I think if I had known these things as a high school student, as a middle school student, as a college student, how differently some of my relationships would have been and how much more productive I could have been.
That I know, it's that I feel that too. It's so true, and that's what drives is that, and that's I know for Bill Dewey, who started this Fit to Serve initiative. I know that that's the passion he had for it as well. So, that's the key here is what can we do to help people live better lives by teaching this stuff to them now. Good. Any other reactions? I know we're down to our last few people. We've had some attrition over the hour and a half. But yeah, Andrea or Bo, any thoughts from you all?
I like that we're getting like the deep foundation just so that we have that understanding. So, I mean, I know Laura and I are going to be teaching it to the elementary, so it's not like we're going to be giving them all of this information. However, like, I feel like to teach something, we have to have that foundation because like in order for us to be teachers, we have to be passionate about it. And I'm passionate about this. I have gone through it with my own children, and it's something that really excites me. And so to get that foundational knowledge is really key to teaching it.
So cool. I'm so there with you, and I appreciate that. I know sometimes the way my teaching approach, they would be like, why are you doing all this theory stuff? But I'm like, well, and especially now it's going to be good because you're not using StrengthsFinder as is. You're going to need to draw more on the theory and adapt it and apply it. Well, how about you? Any thoughts or reactions?
I agree that the deeper dive is so beneficial. Presley did a theme anatomy when we did a team huddle a couple months ago. And so when you learn the strengths, that's kind of the superficial aspect. It's all the positive, like, hey, this is how you're wired and all the fun stuff. But then you do a theme anatomy and you learn your ruts. And that's kind of like that deeper relationship when you learn the ugliness and the challenges that your friends and your family face, but you build that relationship. So learning the ruts and the challenges, I think is beautiful because it helps us understand ourselves more when we relate to others. And it also helps us to understand other people's ruts and how we can soften the blow, I guess, sometimes when we might have some friction, but also appreciate, hey, you bring good things to the table, but you also, this isn't a Pixar movie. We have our challenges.
And now we can have a conversation with people about how to navigate it. And basically it goes in this is what we'll cover next time, is the coin model. But we have to connect with our patterns. We have to observe them. And then we have to learn to interrupt them when there's a mismatch. We don't want to interrupt them all the time, but we have to learn to do it. And that's something we haven't been able to do before. And then we can learn to just have the right nuance, what I call the situationally appropriate level. You guys, we're at noon. We're actually 1 minute over. This was great. I'll post the video. We'll see you next week. Look into your theme anatomy, be amazed, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.